John, so good to see you. We're going to start with an important question. Are you taking on too much risk? 4 signs you might be. Risk isn't just about the numbers, of course, it's about how you feel when market conditions change. So let's talk through 4 signs that you may be taking on more risk than you should. Sign number one is that you check your accounts constantly, but how often is too often?
Sure, I have some clients that can check their accounts on a regular basis, maybe even daily, and they have no problem whatsoever doing that, and they feel good about it. But I have some other clients that maybe are a little bit more on that lower on the risk to curve, that maybe would get a little more nervous when the market's bouncing around and
Yeah.
things of that nature. So sometimes you just have to understand yourself a little bit on that, and so that way you can kind of blend your habits of checking your accounts. Maybe just create a time period where you do check it and when you don't, and just
Yeah.
create that environment so that way you can make it the way you want to see so you don't react in a wrong way.
Right, good point, and we're gonna dive into that and more in a second. So next, also, you do need to ask yourself, do you lose sleep when the market drops? Although that being said, John, sometimes it's really hard to tune out the headlines.
Sure, when the market's bouncing around, especially when you're watching the news and these red bars are going everywhere,
Yeah.
you should never be losing sleep on your investments. Life is too short. You got to understand yourself. And so, really, what it comes down to is making sure if that is happening, it's probably time to make a change and put your accounts into a scenario to where you understand and define what that risk is for yourself. And
Mhm.
usually, an advisor can help you do that.
Right, exactly. All right, third sign that you may be taking on too much risk, you've made panic-driven decisions before. And this is something that we've talked about many times, John. This is known as the investing cycle of emotions, where we tend to do the exact opposite of what we should. Explain what's happening here.
Sure, and the nuts and bolts of this is really what it comes down to is when the market's going really high, the energy's there, and you really just have
Yeah.
this instinct of wanting to jump in and get into the market. When really it maybe sometimes that is the exact opposite time you should be getting in. And versus when the market's down low, there's usually a lot of opportunities at that spot, but
Yeah.
it's really hard to fight the urge to stay out of the market when you've experienced losses in the past and things of that nature.
Right. Good point. And that's also kind of related to sign number 4 here, which is you feel pressure to chase returns, aka FOMO.
Yes. Surely we always get phone calls as the market is churning up
Yeah.
and wanting to jump into the market. A good example is gold's been, a hot one here lately. Um, you know, Things ebb and flow quite a bit out there. And really what you don't want to do is necessarily chase that market. If you want to get some of that, you can maybe use some techniques like dollar cost averaging into the market and things of that way if you want to enter the market. But you certainly don't want to just drop in your whole retirement account into a category that has already had a big upswing. And so
Oof.
it's really important to manage these things so that way you
Right.
don't get caught like people did in 2008 when that market crashed.
Right. Right. When you feel like you can't lose. Good point. So, how can working with a financial advisor help us stay in line with our risk tolerance? Because I feel like logically, John, a lot of us understand that we should be making decisions, better decisions based on data versus how we feel. But how can working with an advisor help?
Yeah, it's always easier said than done, right? And
Absolutely.
and and don't let your advisor fool you, let letting you know that they're not nervous at time too,
Yeah.
right? So really what it comes down to, it starts with that risk profile, right? You have to start there. We go through your account, and really I'm less worried about a score that you're gonna get. I'm more interested in the answers you're giving in the gray areas, and why you're making your decisions, right? So that way you get into the market in a way that you understand and you can define your risk. You can understand, if things go sour, where am I going to be sitting? But what is my upside? And this is where a lot of times, if you integrate that along with some of the techniques like that dollar cost averaging we were talking
Mhm.
about, you really can enter the market at good time periods,
Right.
and reduce that risk.
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, I to me, I think it's helpful working with an advisor because the risk tolerance, it may change year to year, right? Depending on where we are in our retirement too. So it's nice to have somebody to have that conversation with. So that being said, John, if somebody would like to sit down with you, determine what their risk tolerance is, make sure that their portfolio isn't keeping them up at night, what's the best way to reach you?
440-471-4300 is our phone number. It's the best way to probably get a hold of us. But you can go on our website, clarkwealthadvisor.com, and it's pretty easy to shoot us an email via that link as well. But like you were saying, everybody has their risk tolerances. Sometimes I deal with children of clients. They have a longer risk tolerance, right? And we all know
Yeah.
the market can work for you over a long period of time.
Right.
Really where it gets scary is when you're within 5 years of retirement. The last thing you want to do is be prepared to retire and then your market drops and your
Right.
account down 30%, and now you're changing your plans for retirement. You don't
Yeah.
want
Good point. Really good point. All right, John, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
to. Take care. Happy New Year.